Well, thank you, Chairman Griffith, for hosting this hearing today. Thank you to our witnesses for appearing before the committee on this very important topic. And, as we all know, the fire brought horrific loss, and it was truly a tragedy. And for everyone who was impacted, our hearts just break and go out to everyone who has experienced loss. So it's my hope that today in this hearing that we not only get answers, the very really much needed answers for so many people, but also we can identify ways that we can avoid another tragedy. So I'm going to start with you, Ms. Kimura. Did I say that correctly? All right, thank you. So we've seen the news reports alleging that Hawaiian Electric may not have properly maintained its electrical equipment and wooden poles. So I'd like to give you an opportunity to respond to those claims. Specifically, in the response to this committee's August 30th letter, Hawaiian Electric stated that its inspection and mitigation programs on Maui to mitigate fire risk include test and treat. That is the inspection of the poles. And you further explained that as part of the test and treat program, that you were looking for indicators of strength, anchor inspection, treatment of poles for rot and termites, et cetera. Being from Florida, I know what humidity and heat and wind and salt can do to environments and assets, so I understand it's a bit more challenging. But in that report, you stated that you had performed tests and treat programs on approximately 29,000 of the 31,000 wood poles in Maui County since 2013. Why were there approximately 2,000 poles that were not subjected to that same testing?
If I could also take a moment now that I want to clarify an earlier thing that I was talking about in terms of the timing of the red flag warning and when we instituted our protocols. So I was just able to double check on that information. So it was, the red flag warning was initiated overnight on August 7th, and by the morning of August 7th at 7 a.m., we had instituted our protocols. And so I wanted to make that clarification the day before all of this happened. And so on the polls, you are absolutely right, 29 out of 31,000 over the last 10 years. The last 2,000, my understanding is that we just hadn't gotten to those yet, and they're part of our program now. We have looked at, there was a Wall Street Journal article that talked about this recently as well, and if I could take the opportunity to
You could
clarify
certainly, you
what
could
was in
certainly
there?
submit that for the record. I mean,
Okay.
but for the purposes of time, I just really understand if any of those polls that were not tested and treated, those 2,000 plus-ish polls, if they were not part of that program over that 10-year span, were any of those polls the ones located in the areas that were struck by the fire on the 7th and the 8th?
I don't know the answer to that question right now. As we indicated, there's a lot happening right now, and we're still in response mode and haven't been able to look at all of those things. It's a very good question and something that we will look at. I can tell you that near the fire, we had looked at one of the poles, and we know that that was inspected just in 2022. So, that's an indication of poles in those areas and the timing of when they were inspected.
Okay. Well, and I appreciate it, and I certainly know, again, my state, my district just took a Cat 3 hurricane, and
Very
so
sorry for that.
I 100% understand that recovery comes first. But I think certainly in the future, it would be very helpful to understand if those particular polls were in the area that was the initial start and subsequent spread, but then also what we can be doing for the future in terms of mitigating this issue with either composite poles, concrete, steel, looking at a variety where there's areas that are especially prone to having a weakened structure that would be helpful. I have 39 seconds, so I'm going to jump around. I'm going to stay with you, Ms. Kimura. The report that you issued wasn't binding, that the county issued. The 2021, July 2021, the County of Maui Cost of Government Commission, that wildlife reduction, wildfire prevention and cost recovery on Maui, that report, that's not binding, correct?
I don't know if that's binding. I think that one was
you're aware of
through
the
the
existence
County
of
of
it.
Maui. Yes, I'm
Okay.
aware of the report. That was a report to the County of Maui.
So did anyone from the utility engage with Maui County or the Cost of Government Commission following the report to identify a way that Hawaii Electric could help address the concerns that were laid out in this report?
Based on what I was told, we were not tasked with those recommendations from the County of Maui. Those recommendations went to personnel within the County of Maui, and we were not necessarily tasked with those recommendations. That said, what those recommendations, the content of that recommendation or those two recommendations, we were already doing that, and that's part of our wildfire mitigation plan.
My time has expired, but I think it's really important for us to nail down what happens with jurisdiction on those recommendations and who takes responsibility for them. I know you said you were implementing a number of them, but I'd like to know where the liability falls. So with that, I yield back. Thank you to our witnesses once again.
Thank the gentlelady for yielding back. Now I recognize the gentleman from Alabama, Mr. Palmer, for his 5 minutes of questioning.
I thank the chairman. I thank the witnesses for appearing. It's heartbreaking